Welcome, welcome. Happy World Mindfulness Day. Thank you for everyone that has joined. I am so excited to be here with you today. My name is Shawntà Hooks. I am the founder and CEO of Mindful Culture Creators, where I'm a keynote speaker and I have a mission in life to help people understand mindfulness, the power of mindfulness to really enhance their sense of connection and specifically their sense of belonging at work. My journey to mindfulness has been unconventional. I did not grow up learning mindfulness or doing mindfulness. It happened upon me about 6 years ago after experiencing a lot of just change in my life, a lot of discomfort, stress, anxiety. I was a new mom. I was mourning the loss of my father, who died a few years prior to this, as well as working in a toxic work environment at the time. And if you could imagine just the stress of all just those three things right there, right? Being a new mom, um, dealing with the grief of my father who had just recently passed away, and working in a toxic work environment. I found that I needed something else besides working out and eating healthy and going to therapy. I was doing all of those things, but I still felt this persistent feeling of discomfort and anxiety in my body. And mindfulness kept popping up. It kept popping up in such a way that eventually I started to pay attention to it. And that was like June of 2019. And by December of 2019, I was meditating every single day for usually around 20 minutes a day. And when I tell you it's totally transformed my life, I went from being a banking vice president to having my own business. Adopting mindfulness as my lifestyle has totally just really shattered a lot of fear that I didn't even know existed inside of me. I've always considered myself to be a pretty fearless individual. But there's something about awareness, right? There's something about gaining awareness, gaining greater awareness that shines a light on the areas of your life where you need some improvement. And so I'm really excited to just host this live today as free community mindfulness. I think we have somewhere around 20 or so people on this live right now across the various platforms, and so we'll continue to go for about 30 minutes or so. Please use the chat. I'm going to open the chat. I see some folks commenting. Hello, Tasha. Hello, Austin. Hello, Jules. I'm so glad that you guys could be here today. I'm using the streaming platform, so I can't really see who's all on the call. But if you do, please drop in the chat, wherever you are in the chat. Please drop in the chat one word to describe how you feel right now. Just just how you feel right now in this moment. Let's all collectively honor our feelings, honor the present moment by proclaiming how we feel right now. I personally feel when I first joined, I was a little nervous because, again, this is a new platform that I'm using. And of course, you want to make sure that it's right. I couldn't really see that people joined. And then I did get a message saying that folks have joined. So drop in the chat how you feel right now. How do you feel? Do you feel calm? Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel nervous? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel tense? Do you feel at ease? What is the language that you would use to describe how you feel in this moment? And thank you for those that are contributing to the chat. Good morning, Michelle. Hi, Toby. It's so good to see you. Tasha, inspired. Austin, thankful. Yes, gratitude. I appreciate you guys bringing that energy of inspiration and gratitude to this space. And as we continue to think about how we feel, Toby, thank you for acknowledging how you feel right now, tired. um, Please continue to drop in the chat. This is your space to have a container to practice mindfulness, to learn a little bit about mindfulness, but most importantly, to honor how you feel. This is not about me. Everything that we're doing right now is about you. It's for you. It's my gift to you. Um, Relaxed. Thank you, Sunny, for sharing. Calm. Thank you for Amanda for sharing. Grateful but overwhelmed. And blessings to your mom, Michelle, who is dealing with COVID. And good luck on your interviewing. Yes, please continue to drop in the chat how you feel. And even if you don't drop in the chat, just, bring yourself to awareness to how you feel. I invite you to maybe take a moment to close your eyes and just simply tune into this moment right now. No right or wrong answer. And whatever comes to mind, feel free to open your eyes and drop it in the chat. And as you continue to think about how you feel, I want to just ground us in what mindfulness is. I think it's so important as adults that we, really kind of step back out of our adult roles and step into more of that student role, especially when it comes to these topics of mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and overall personal and professional development. There are many definitions of mindfulness. I prefer the definition that uses the most plain English and is very neutral from a spiritual perspective. And the language that I use to describe what mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. It's four elements: paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. And I think out of those four elements, the element that is the trickiest is one of the trickiest. I mean, they all can be tricky, right? It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to pay attention. And sometimes it's hard to set an intention to pay attention. And sometimes it's hard to be non-judgmental, right? That's the one that always kind of gets me. A lot of times when we choose to, have a mindful moment, whether we are doing yoga, whether we are attending a class, whether we are doing our work, right? We can approach our work in a mindful way without judgment and our full attention and focus. But those thoughts come, right? The thoughts come that, sometimes feel good and sometimes don't feel so good. And right now in this space, we're going to really address the thoughts that don't feel so good, those negative thoughts that, oftentimes really stop us from being able to experience the present moment in its full glory. So that some of the positive words that are in the chat right now, relaxed and curious and peaceful and blessed, those experiences can rise to the surface, right? It's hard for those experiences to rise to the surface if we're weighed down by our negative thoughts. And you can kind of think of your thoughts that way. Think of the negative thoughts as heavy and the positive thoughts as light. Not either being good or bad. Heavy is not bad nor good. Light is not bad nor good. Let's just consider them what they are. When we are stuck in negative thinking, oftentimes we get stuck there, right? Heavy literally sinks and it stops. It creates friction. It creates resistance. And sometimes we have to sit with that, right? We have to really just sit with it and observe it and get curious about it so that we can transition out of it. The language that I've been using a lot lately to describe that is navigating from negativity to neutrality with our thoughts. Because if you think about it, it's a spectrum. And I have a process background. I worked for 20 years in audit and accounting and risk management and process improvement. So I think in terms of process. It helps me to understand and reach understanding when I do think of things in terms of a process. But I like to see our thoughts on a spectrum of negative, neutral, and positive, right? Or another way, if you can think about judgment, you have judgment, you have neutrality, and then you have praise, right? So what we are trying to do, oftentimes a goal of a mindfulness practice can be to simply navigate from negative to neutral. Get to that neutral space. And when you do it within a container like this, within a practice, you may find, and this is what happened to me in my real life, I found that the more I practiced it in containers, meaning setting aside 5, 10, 15, as much as sometimes 20, 30 minutes to just sit and notice and practice non-objective awareness. When I do that in practice, when I show up in my real life, I find that I'm able to more effectively and efficiently navigate out of negative thinking into neutrality. And we are going to practice that today. I'm going to teach you a technique because there are many ways to practice mindfulness and meditation. If you follow me, I share a lot of these ways on my social media, so please continue to follow me. But today we're going to do a technique called noting. And noting is a mindfulness technique that is really powerful to help you transition out of negative thinking and into neutrality. And sometimes even out of positive thinking. We can kind of get swept up in our dreams too, to where we're on cloud nine and we don't actually get any work done. We're so busy dreaming that we don't actually get the work done. So this goes both ways. There are benefits of being in that neutral space because when you're in that neutral space, you get greater clarity. You are able to actually pause and see things as they are. Again, not good, not bad, just as it is. And that's why it's called noting, because in the technique or in the practice that we're going to do in a couple of minutes, I'm going to guide you in the practice of allowing your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, even distraction, right? Even distraction to come, to rise, and for you to notice it with an attitude and a perspective of neutrality. As a matter of fact, I give you permission, and I want you to give yourself permission to move into neutrality today, to shift your perspective into that of neutrality today. Again, seeing things not as good nor bad, just as it is. And one last thing that I want to point out before we get into the practice is, and this is really just a little bit of wisdom for you, a different perspective on thinking. We have to remember that one, we are not our thoughts. We are not our thoughts. And just because you think a thought doesn't mean you have to believe it. It doesn't mean you have to own it. Thoughts are just thoughts, like clouds in the sky. They come and they go, they pass. Sometimes they sit still for a moment and then they pass. When you allow yourself to really just see your thoughts and your experiences at some point in your life with an element of objectivity, of neutrality, without judgment, then you find that things pass more effectively, easily, quicker. And thank you, Austin, for dropping some wisdom in the chat. Good news, bad news. Good news, bad news, who knows? I love that. There's always an opportunity for you to shift into neutrality. And sometimes, as we get ready to do our practice, I invite you to get curious about any distractions that come up. Maybe your phone might ping unexpectedly, or maybe there may be a loud noise that comes up in the room that you're in. The most common distraction is our own thoughts, right? You'll be listening to me or listening to your breath, and then suddenly you'll notice that you're thinking. You're caught up in a cloud, in a spiral of thoughts. So one thought turns into thinking. When you notice it, you'll simply just make note of it. Don't judge the experience. Or if you do judge the experience, note that you're judging the experience. This is your space to be the observer. And hopefully you walk out of that space with greater clarity about what it means to be able to shift, your own power. Hopefully you walk away feeling empowered to know that you can always shift your thinking, your feelings, your emotions, your experiences out of negativity into neutrality. Yeah, I see that there's a question. So yes, please drop questions in the chat. Feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we will have space after the practice to answer questions. But right now, I want you to actually get yourself ready for practice. So make note of your question, maybe write it down or drop it in the chat, and we will absolutely get to it. So as we ready ourselves for practice, I invite you to just get comfortable in your seat. This practice will take about 7 minutes. And I invite you to stay with me the full 7 minutes. I understand that you probably have a lot of things to do today, as do I. But you made it here. You made a choice to be here, so be here. Give yourself permission to turn off outside noise, tasks, and duties for 7 minutes. Take a moment as you ready yourself and get into a space of comfort in your seat. And before you close your eyes, just make note of what you see right now. Maybe you see your computer screen. Maybe you see your phone. Just take a moment to note what you see. I invite you to take a deep breath in through the nose and out the mouth. And as you take 3 more deep breaths in through the nose and out the mouth, I invite you to close your eyes. Or you can keep them open with a soft gaze, but I invite you to close them to really shut out your outside environment and allow yourself to go within. As you breathe, just a bit deeper than you normally breathe, really tuning into what it feels like to breathe, perhaps placing your hands on your abdomen. And just note what you're noticing about your breath. Imagine that you have a pencil and a paper, and you're just making objective observations about your breathing. What words do you use? Perhaps your breath is shallow, deep. Maybe you notice your abdomen or your chest rising and falling. Make note of any parts of the body that actually move as you breathe gently on your own. Simply notice and let go. Take a moment to notice if you're thinking. What are you thinking about? Try to keep all of your observations neutral. Maybe you're thinking about the things that you have to do later or the things you just did. Just simply note it, understanding that you can always return back to the breath. At this point, I invite you to shift your perspective to any sounds, in addition to my voice, any sounds that may be present in your space. Using objective awareness, what do you hear? Maybe you hear the sound of traffic. Maybe you hear the white noise in your room from your computer or your air conditioning unit. Use that imaginary pen and paper and simply make note of what you hear. Lastly, I invite you to make note of how you feel. No judgment. Using your imaginary notebook and pencil, simply make note of how you feel in this moment. And with every note, just allow it to pass, not lingering, noting and passing. As we get ready to close out this practice, I invite you to take a deep breath, the deepest breath you've taken today, in through the nose. Perhaps even tensing your body, tensing your hands, your abdomen, whatever part of your body you can tense up as you breathe in, and as you breathe out, releasing that tension. Let's do that one more time, taking a deep breath in, tensing the body, tensing the hands, tensing any part of the body that you're able to place tension in, and then exhaling and releasing that tension. With your imaginary pen and paper, make note of how you feel when you do that exercise, breathing in and invoking tension, breathing out, releasing tension. How would you describe that feeling to a 5-year-old? As always, we like to close our practice with gratitude. So mentally, emotionally, give yourself gratitude for allowing this time for yourself. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And now I would love for you to place in the chat how you feel. How did that feel? What came up for you? And if you have any questions, please drop those in the chat as well. And I'll hang on for a moment to allow the comments to come. Relax. Thank you, Toby. And as you think about, how you feel, and please, one of the most important parts of meditation, mindfulness, is the reflection. I want to add that this technique is actually very effective at helping you reach states of relaxation and reduce stress. It was actually a study done by Carnegie Mellon University, where they took a group of stress volunteers, and for a portion of the group, they had them do this noting technique. And for another portion of the group, they had them do different types of breathing practices. And the noting techniques actually showed higher rates of reduction in stress hormones, stress responses, as well as lower blood pressure levels. So, please use this technique when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling, kind of distracted by your environment. You can always tune into the distraction and practice just objective awareness of it. So I'm loving the comments. And I'm going to just take a moment to answer a question. When do we move from mindfulness to avoidance? Is there such a thing as enjoying mindfulness too much? I crave the peace and calm that comes with being still. This is a really good question, and it's probably one that we could devote a whole session to, because there is some rhetoric out there that says that there can be too much mindfulness. I say that what I understand about the collective right now, where we are as a humanity, with all of our distractions, all of the stress, all of the tasks, all of the things to do, I think that the risk of mindfulness becoming avoidance is very low. And again, I have a risk management background, so I evaluate everything from a risk perspective. Is there a risk that mindfulness can step into avoidance? Absolutely. You can become, you can step into a place where you're neutral about everything. But I think that risk is very, very low for most of us. I think unless you were to really devote your life as, having a lifestyle of, sort of making this a true spiritual path, perhaps going into being a monk or some other path, that is a risk that you may have to address. But I think for everyday life, most of us are really just trying to get back in touch with the present moment, back in touch with our bodies. And mindfulness is not avoidance. It's actually the opposite. It's engaging the present moment. So it's not avoiding the present moment. It's not avoiding the things that are happening in the world. It's being tuned into it with an attitude of objective awareness. And that is really difficult. You think about right now, we have a political season, we have so many things happening in this world that cause us to get emotional or get overwhelmed or become judgmental. And what mindfulness can help you do is step into a space where you are not so judgmental, you are not so emotional, you are not so overwhelmed by those things. So I hope that answered your question. Any other questions? And I'm loving the comments. I appreciate you guys acknowledging. A lot of you changed your perspective on how you felt. You came in saying that you were stressed and overwhelmed, and I see some of you actually have a complete opposite feeling right now. That, my friends, is called transformation, right? I think sometimes we think of transformation as this big thing, right? It's this big thing. It's the caterpillar and the butterfly. That's transformation. Transformation is moment to moment, literally going from believing one thing to believing something else, having one perspective and changing that perspective. That is transformation too. So I appreciate you for transforming in this moment. Another question. How do you communicate that you're not saying no to someone, you're saying yes to yourself? Oh, boundaries, right? That's a conversation around boundaries. And this is where the neutrality comes in, right? It really, really helps. This is where it's actually effective. When you find that you need to set a boundary, here's a tip for you. When you find an opportunity to set a boundary, to communicate a boundary, I invite you to first take 3 deep breaths. Allow your mind to get into a space of neutrality, and then have the conversation about the boundary. Now you can have the conversation without the emotion, without as much emotion, without so much fear, without so much concern about how the other person is going to receive your boundary, because their receipt of your boundary is not really your concern. The main concern is that you take care of yourself. And so when you start to do that, and it takes practice, right? I didn't grow up using the language boundary. That's a word that didn't really come into my language until about 5 years ago, if I'm being honest. And so I had to learn how to set boundaries with an attitude of objectivity. And so it's a practice. And the more you practice it, the less bothered you become about how someone receives your boundary, because that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be able to communicate your needs clearly, effectively, and in a way that is, perhaps respectful. I hope that answered your question, Toby. Yes, Audrey, leaning into the present with curiosity. Curiosity is, I look at curiosity as almost, I won't say it's like magic. I'll use the language. Curiosity is like the cherry on top of life. It's such a beautiful thing to tap into. And again, it's something you can practice. Next time you go for a walk, just walk outside in your neighborhood, just take a moment to stop and get curious about something you've never been curious about before. Engage your senses, again, engage your sense of sight, your sense of smell, your sense of touch. And again, the more you practice these things, the better you get at them and where it really matters, right? We want to be curious within our work. We want to get curious about the work we're doing. We want to get curious about how we feel. We want to get curious about the people we're communicating with. Connection happens when we're curious about each other. I love when I'm talking to someone and they ask me questions. They show that they're curious about who I am and what I do. So that's a two-way street. You receive it, you give it. You give it, you receive it. That's how we enter a positive flow in life. Yeah, but yes, boundaries. Great share. And remember, no is a complete sentence. Yes, Audrey. And congratulations on your talk. I think Audrey did a talk this past weekend and I heard it was amazing. I'm sure you shared so much wisdom. And that's what this is about. When we are practicing mindfulness, we're readying ourselves to share our gifts. We're readying ourselves to shed our fear so that we can share our gifts with pride and with joy and with honor and with gratitude. So doing these practices, practicing noting, practicing objective awareness, practicing navigating from negativity to neutrality, sometimes even positivity to neutrality, getting to that center, getting to that middle. That's where you get things done. That is called effortless effort. That's a good combination of the light energy and the heavy energy. You mix them together, now you have effortless effort. I really hope that this session was helpful to you. I'll be hosting more of these lives because I am in service to community. I do this work because I love it, because I believe in the transformative nature of mindfulness and meditation. I believe in its utility. I believe that it's one of the tools that many of us are not doing on a consistent basis. When I first started doing this work, I used to always say, I want people to believe in mindfulness the way that they believe about drinking water. We know that we should drink, I don't know, 64 ounces of water today, and most of us try. At some point, my dream in life is that we'll all do mindfulness and meditation with the same ritualistic behavior that we do drinking water and eating food and taking walks and exercising our body. We're not there yet. But that's why I'm here to help. Please, if you are looking for speakers, if you are in an organization where you're looking for classes and experiences like this for your teams, for your organizations, for your communities, please reach out. This is the work that I do to support communities and to support organizations in strengthening their sense of connection and belonging with self. When we strengthen that sense of connection and belonging with self, we feel like we can belong everywhere we are. And that's the goal. Peace, y'all. Happy World Mindfulness Day. Have an amazing day. And I will see you soon. If you like this, send me a DM. Tell me what you thought about it. And until next time, peace.